Look at this thing. We've had to build a cage. It looks like my tree's either in the zoo or in jail, but these are the measures we have to take around here because everything's getting eaten. Hi, it's Steph and welcome back to my garden, and this is our first video of 2023. So happy New Year, everyone. It's a new gardening season. And it looks like I wasn't the only one doing some snacking around the holidays. I've been taking a look around the garden and I have quite a bit of deer damage, potentially some bunny damage. So we've had to take some measures to keep things protected. So today I'm going to show you what I've been doing to keep my plants safe over the rest of the winter, as well as some other things that gardeners do to keep themselves occupied over the winter season. So here I have an Oriental golden spruce, and this is a beautiful specimen. The only thing is that it grows really slow. And last year I already had a little bit of deer damage on it. This was the second year that I've had this planted. And last year they did lop off a lot of the front. You can kind of tell that most of the growth is along the back and the front kind of got chopped. So I had to protect this winter so that I wouldn't have that happen again. And eventually I would have no tree left. Because these are such slow growers, it's really important to protect them. So I've essentially made a cage out of chicken wire. At first, I only had this tomato cage at the bottom with some wire around it. But what would happen is as the deer would come through, they usually come in through the woods in the back here. They have a really clear path into our garden. And I think that they were just kind of like snacking over the top of this tomato cage because they have kind of a little bit of a long neck, like a giraffe. They would just come over and take some bites. So I've had to enclose the top as well. So now I have this huge cage around my tree, but I'm really hoping that it keeps it safe and that it can put on some more growth this year. But let me show you some other measures I've had to take. For example, right here, I have this small little honey dwarf oak leaf hydrangea. It was so beautiful this past fall. It had the most gorgeous golden chartreuse color. And it had put on a pretty significant amount of growth. But one day I came out here and it was completely chomped. And now I'm down to 2 twigs. So I took this mesh wastebasket from the Dollar Tree and I sat it on top with a stone because we get a lot of wind and the stone will help weight it down. And now I have to keep that protected well into next season. And then I'll have to spray it regularly to keep them away. I used a couple of other things as well. So let me show you that. This fall, I worked on moving some shrubs that were in a different area that I wanted to move into this back garden space. And a couple of those were some rhododendron and an azalea. Now, rhododendron are supposed to be somewhat deer resistant, but in my garden, they're not. And that's the thing. You never really know. If something is marked as deer resistant, it doesn't necessarily mean that deer will stay away from it. You always have new families of deer coming through, so the babies will try anything. And what might not appeal to one deer might appeal to another. It's just like humans, right? We all have different taste in food. So nothing is actually always 100% safe. So when I moved this rhododendron, I really quickly realized that they were going to be a problem for me, the deer. They chopped off a bunch of the growth that I had in the back here. And you can see that, you know, these are clearly deer damage because they have a very rigid cut at the end, I guess you could say. They just bite off the tips. And they also really love the blooms. So for example, right here, I have a bloom bud that is starting to swell for the spring. You got to keep this netting loose or else they will bite this right through. But what I did to kind of divert them from touching these is I used some netting. Now this is some bird netting that you can get, and a lot of people use this when they're growing fruit such as berries to drape over their berries to keep the birds away from eating their fruit. Well, it also works for deer fencing in the sense that it provides a texture that they don't like. So if they go here and they try to bite these leaves, they're going to hit this plastic netting and not really like the texture of it, and hopefully will leave these alone. I also planted a azalea here that used to be in another area of the garden, and azalea is not very deer resistant, and you can see that they took a lot of growth off of this shrub. At least a foot of growth, which is really disappointing. But hopefully if I can keep them away, it'll put on some growth next spring. In addition to the chicken wire and this bird netting, you may have noticed these little things sticking out around some of these evergreens that I'm going to show you that they've been eating. This is something new that I'm trying out, and it's a wireless deer fence. Now, because the perimeter of our yard is kind of big, because it's in a wooded area, it would make it really difficult for us to install an actual fence. So because that's not feasible, I started looking at other options and came across this wireless deer fencing. And what it is these spikes that you put into the ground, and they have a battery in them, and these little scent capsules that you put on them that smell floral, and they're attractive to deer. And what this is doing is training the deer to not like that specific plant or in the general area that you have these in the ground. So for example, if I put this spike right here in the center of this grouping of plants, the fragrance on this little capsule there will attract them to that. And what happens is it's battery charged. It will give them a little zap. And it shouldn't hurt them. It should be no more than a little, like an electric static. And it's just enough to kind of scare them away. And if you know how deer travel, they travel in groups. So if one goes to sniff that and gets that little zap, it's gonna get scared off and run, and hopefully the rest will follow. And so that's what that is. And I'm not gonna plug these. I'm not gonna give you too much information about them just yet, because I did buy them with my money, but I wanna make sure that they actually work. And the real test will be the winter, but the summer when all of my blooms are out. And I will let you know then how they work and what I think of them. And like I've said before, right behind me, they have a clear path. So as they were coming up, they were really destroying this hinoki cypress, which kind of surprised me because I have quite a few hinoki in my garden. And for some reason, this is the one that they like to touch. So I've had to build another cage. I have some chicken wire, as well as some of this bird netting over top. And I've draped the bird netting down the hill over the other two rhododendron that I put here. But that's not all. In addition to the netting, I also stuck one of these wireless deer fence tulips here to, again, hopefully train them to stay away from this area. We get zapped here. This is not a safe spot. Let's keep moving. Everything in this bed is pretty dead, but my Acorus sweet flag ogon looks absolutely beautiful. Look, it's evergreen, nice bright pop of yellow in this otherwise dreary bed. And here is the island bed that we just created this fall. And I planted this Sentinel Dragon holly here as some evergreen interest. And I very quickly found out that this is not deer resistant in my garden. If you look up hollies, they say that they are somewhat deer resistant, but in my garden they're not, because they took quite a bit of growth off of this new evergreen. And you can see all of these blunt cuts, which I was really disappointed about. So I did go ahead and stick one of these wireless deer fence spikes in this general area to hopefully keep them away. But in addition to that, I've started to pick up my spraying routine again. Now, I'm really good about spraying for deer and rabbits in the summer, but over the winter months, I start getting lazy about it, and that's when they strike. So not only did they hit this holly, they also started snacking on my red twig dogwoods, which I thought were resistant. So I am back to a routine of trying to spray weekly and more often if it rains. When it comes to deer and rabbit repellent, I have quite an arsenal. I currently am favoring this liquid fence deer and rabbit. This stuff smells really badly. So you want to be careful about doing this on a windy day, because if you get this sweet perfume on yourself, you're gonna be able to repel more than just deer. But anyway, I have been liking this one, and I did get quite a big container for not a lot of money. It was a pretty good price on Amazon. I have an Amazon Hooked and Rooted page. I link it below the video. So if any of the items that I ever talk about, if it's something you're interested in, I do have it linked there. You can check it out. But I also have a few other ones that I will rotate between, because the thing with deer and rabbit is they'll get used to the same scent and then it will no longer repel them. So I have Bob-X. The Bob-X works great. The thing I don't like about this is that it's very concentrated and you have to mix it in one of these pump sprayers. And I prefer not to use it because I don't like the whole mixing of the ratio of water and the liquid. So I tend to stay away from this one for that reason. This one's already pre-mixed with a sprayer. It's just easy. So I tend to reach for this the most, as well as these pre-mixed bottles. So this one here is called Deer Out. It smells like peppermint. I have this other one, it's called Deer Stopper. It's actually almost gone, which is why it flew off this wall here. And this repels all, works really well. This one's a granular one, and it's like a powder that you would kind of just shake in your garden beds, and it's supposed to repel some of these animals on the front away from your plants. So this one here is another good one. It's called Deer Scram. It's also a granular. So I have quite a few, and the most important thing is just to be consistent. If you get a lot of rain, this stuff will wash away, and so you have to be consistent about reapplying it. And in the winter and in the spring, since you typically get more rain, you're going to be out there applying a little bit more frequently. But if you have plants that you want to keep in good shape and away from the deer and rabbits, it's a necessary evil. Just part of the gardening job, right? I thought that I would give you an update on how my Boston ferns and my geraniums are doing. Back on October 10th, I made a video about overwintering Boston ferns and geraniums, and here they are. So these are my larger ones that were in the urns by the garden shed, and they're still looking really good. I've been keeping the soil moist, and so while there is a little bit of drying out going on because the humidity is low in my basement, they are still alive and doing well. So I will just have to trim off some of these dry stems, give it a little bit of fertilizer when I bring them out in a few months, and I think they should be up and running. And here are the hangers. These are the hanging Boston ferns that I had, also looking great. And the geraniums are doing well as well. So these still have some foliage, which is great. These two have foliage. This one does not. I lost all of its foliage, but the stems are still green, which means it still has some life. So hopefully in the next couple of months, it'll come out of dormancy and start sprouting some foliage. And my rosemary, I actually brought in this year, and it's still doing well and has some new growth. This soft growth here is new growth. So the overwintering is going well so far. So this is my basement and the area where I do my winter sowing, and it serves sort of as like a little makeshift studio when I do my videos indoor over the winter months when I can't be out in the garden. So I've been collecting my containers to start my winter sowing in just a couple of months, usually around the first week of February. And in our last video where I gave you 5 reasons to winter sow, I mentioned that it would be a good time to start collecting those. So here's another reminder. I also received my Baker Creek seed order recently, and a really cute envelope. This year they've changed the style of it from a bubble mailer to this cardboard envelope, and all of your seeds are in here with a cute little wrap. I really like the way they packaged them. So in an upcoming video, I will share with you the seeds that I ended up buying, as well as some other seed organization that I do over the winter. And I've actually collected quite a few seeds from my garden that I've been keeping here in these glass jars to dry out, and I will be sorting those as well. So stick around for that. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video, just kind of taking a look around the garden, seeing what we're doing to protect the plants from the deer and the bunnies, as well as an update on the plants. So as always, thank you for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.